And we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Behind the ToolBelt, episode 228. Today, we have another special guest, my friend Chris Hofstra. Stay tuned, and we will be back after our short intro from our sponsors.
TC Backer. Roofing, siding, windows, gutters, solar. Roofing, siding, windows, gutters, solar. TC Backer.
Is your lead flow down? Whether you're a company owner, office staff, salesperson, or installer, you're a roofing rock star. We help you get more leads with custom SEO, Google Ads, and a pro website.
TC Backer.
And we are back after our brief little commercials from our sponsors there. Big shout out to them, Hook Agency, Lead Scout, and Roofle, and TC Backer, of course, and Wind the Storm, and all those cool, groovy people. If you haven't liked, loved, subscribed, reviewed on any of our platforms, please do that. We're on Spotify, Google, Apple, YouTube, and of course, Facebook Live. So go on to any of our pages or our channels, TC Backer, Behind the ToolBelt. Please like, love, share, and comment, because I have no social media on my phone anymore. So I did not get to really share the way that I wanted to, although I did get a notification that we were live. So that's how I know we're live today. So anyhow, I'm with my brother today, my friend, a coach at times, a mentor, my guidance counselor, Chris Hofstra with Lead Scout. How you doing, buddy?
And it's good to be back. It's good to be back, Ty.
No doubt.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I think the last time we did this for a few minutes, we were at April Hall's Storm Restoration Conference in Austin. Was that Austin, Texas, or
Denton, maybe? I don't know.
Denton,
Austin. I don't think it was Austin. I think we flew into Dallas and then went north. So
oh yeah,
Frisco. I just remember my kids were yes, Frisco. There you go, because my kids were like, "Dad, can you make sure to stop by Dude Perfect's headquarters?" And I did not, but that is a staple for Frisco.
No doubt.
Yeah. So it's been a while. I can't. I was just smiling when I was watching Tim Brown's ad and thinking, our ad's pretty cool, but like it's way more fun watching Tim Brown's stuff. I mean, the fact that I'm smiling watching it means it's working.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the passion and creativity that he puts into his content. It's just, I mean, there's really not a lot like it out there. So Shout out to the Hook Agency for all they do for the industry and
Yes.
for making my little reel at the beginning kind of look lame. So I think I need to work on that.
Yeah, he's helped you level up. And
That's
yeah,
right.
big shout out to Tim Brown and Hook Agency. He was actually one of our first early adopters. And he has inspired us. I actually got to spend about a week with him last week in Cayman, and me and you had a conversation about a gentleman right before we went on here, and you had made the comment that like this is definitely somebody that you want in the industry right now. Like he's just going to be good for our industry. And honestly, our honest heartedly opinion about Tim Brown is that he's one of those dudes. Like he just wants to see people do well, and he really worries about that. Right. And I know his passion and his heart is definitely in the right place for our industry. And he's definitely one of those trailblazers like yourself, Chris, that, came into our industry, may have been a different industry or whatever. But I think Tim actually started out in the industry. But anyhow, not to convolute this or dilute or whatever, but like both of you guys are like good people to have in our industry right now. Because of where I found it when I got into it, 20 plus years ago, it was a little bit different than it is today. And there's like this revolution, this roofing revolution kind of going on. And the direction that it's going in right now is because of people like Tim Brown and his creativity, right? Like being a roofing rock star, hook better leads, right? Like I want that shit going through my head, right? That positive vibe, those positive people in my life today, like you and Tim and Joe Huffman at Roofle, which is another one of our sponsors there. I think we got to update our little banner down there at the bottom at some point in time. But with everything going on, me traveling and stuff like that, God bless Vic and his patience and tolerance too for putting up with my crazy ass, with traveling and stuff like that. And the poor guy, I think, hung out in the studio in the background, kind of like we did before we let you in. That's called the studio. When you're sitting down there in the bottom of the screen there. I had realized Vic had sat there probably for a good 2 hours when I was in Cayman last Wednesday night. Like I must have just distracted. And if you know me, like I know you know me, I get distracted very easily. So I must have just got up mid conversation because something else caught my attention in the room. And like, I don't know, at least an hour and a half later, I come back, there was Vic still sitting there, like playing his guitar, just kind of like killing time. Like I know I will be back at some point in time and let me know we're going live, because we didn't even have a time set for when we were going live last week, because it was like our schedule was, around their schedule, because I didn't want to take the retreat hostage. You know what I mean? So whatever it was, whenever you can fit us in, it's just something that I'm consistent with every week. And by all means, I want everybody on the show with us.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened. And there was Vic, man, just chilling, playing his guitar, strumming away. And I was like, oh, dude, I am so sorry. I was like, I didn't realize. I was like, were you waiting for me on something to come back to tell you something or whatever? But anyhow.
The man. That's why Vic's the man.
Yeah, Vic is definitely the man. But
so I want to hear more about this Cayman mastermind group that you did with Eric O. I think this is your first show since you've been back. I mean, you were the last show you were there. You got back Saturday. I'd love to hear more about it. Maybe next year I can join you guys.
For sure, man. Definitely great question. I'm glad you asked me that question, because life-changing for me. We talk a lot about, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and, just traveling itself. And I know you can relate to this, traveling, being without your family and stuff like that in itself is kind of uncomfortable to begin with. But leading up to, there was a couple legs to this trip, right? Like I had an online course to take for scuba, which wasn't very difficult, but very lengthy. Like it just very time consuming. Okay. So I had to complete all that. And I needed to do that before I did my local pool testing. Right. And then to come to find out, I didn't have to necessarily do that before then, but it was recommended I did, especially since I was going to travel someplace else to take my open water certification. So it was, first leg of the trip was, online testing. Second leg was my local pool testing. Third leg was to go to Grand Cayman and do open water diving certification training. And I've told this story a couple times this past week where, I had drowned in a swimming pool, Olympic sized swimming pool, with a group of friends and loved ones. They were racing back and forth, and I had this towel and I was smacking it on the water, basically saying, go, and then they would take off. Of course, they're under the water and I fell in the deep end. And all I remember is seeing like the sun and I couldn't figure out how to get back to the top. So that feeling, that horrific experience has stuck with me since then. Okay. And don't get me wrong. I'm a great swimmer because of that. Like that same day they taught me how to swim, they're like, that's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
So of course they threw me in. I learned how to do the doggy paddle and kind of just stay buoyant on top of the water and keep my head from going under. But I love being around the water. I love being on the water. I'm an avid saltwater fisherman. I love that for one of my hobbies and stuff like that. But never, crossed my mind that, it wasn't on my bucket list. Let's say that, like, to go scuba diving. I had no obsession or passion or dreams of going scuba diving. But when the opportunity came up, plus Erica is probably one of my best friends in the top 5-7 top friends of mine. If he's got something going on and I'm invited, I'm going. I'm not going to say no because I just enjoy spending time with Eric. He's a great dude.
Good.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I'm going to get something out of this. And I thought, what a great opportunity for me to face that fear, right? Like you hear people, that story about that old lady not wanting to take the elevator, right? I don't know if you've ever heard that story or not. And I don't know it well enough to explain it, but it was one of those fears where I knew I had to face the fear. Now it's time for me to walk the walk, right? Like I talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and pushing yourself to the next level. And there's another gear, stop, don't stop the fight and all that stuff. So it's like, okay, so Saturday night, the first night that I had my 6-hour pool training, I was contemplating if I was going back Sunday. And I won't talk too much about this because I'll get more into the trip then, but I just want everybody to know, like, the mental masturbation that went on behind the scenes of like, I'm doing it, I'm not doing it, I'm doing it, I'm not doing it, I'm doing it, I'm not doing it. Right. Like I was arguing with myself. And then I came to the conclusion of like, what kind of human being or leader would I be if I don't complete something that I said that I was going to do first and foremost. Right. Mm-hmm. And the second thing that went through my mind is if I can overcome this adversity, right? Like I need to put myself in this uncomfortable situation because, mental toughness isn't, it's something that you have to work on, right? It's a skill, mm-hmm. right? You have to intentionally put yourself in uncomfortable situations. It's a mental thing, not necessarily a physical thing, right? So it was a mental thing. So I'm always continuously trying to work on that skill of mental toughness. Right. So anyhow, I went through all that. I finished it. I completed it. I called Eric 3 days before and I was like, dude, I'm not coming. Right.
Really?
Yep. Called him up, said, I'm not coming. I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. And I'm coming up. I'm trying to come up with these things that aren't necessarily lies, but I'm grasping at straws here, bro. Sure. Why I can't go. Like I can't, we're busy. We're working 3 storms right now. And he kind of laughed and chuckled. And I'm like laughing at myself because now I'm embarrassed of like telling him, these awful things that aren't necessarily true because who cares that we're working 3 storms? What am I doing? I'm not doing anything. The team's doing it. Like I'm just going to sit at my desk and kick myself in the ass because I didn't go really is what probably would have happened last week. Anyhow, I get off the phone. I talked to Jana. I told Jana, hey, I called Eric and I told him I'm not coming. And she was like, why? And of course, she's like, that's just dumb. You spent all this money on this training certification. And she's like, you even bought your plane tickets, didn't you? And I was like, yeah. She's like, you're dumb. So I was like, okay. I call Eric up literally 3.2 minutes later. I'm like, dude, don't give up my room yet, bitch. And he laughed. He was like, well, that didn't take long. And I was like, no, I'm coming. I'm going. So long story short, we get there. It's beautiful. I get there on a Monday. Right. It's beautiful. The island is just magnificent. The weather finally, because mind you, when I drove to Harrisburg Airport that morning, it was 33 degrees. I get down there, it's 90 and it's beautiful. Right. And the cool thing about this retreat is that there wasn't any curriculum or schedule or itinerary other than we're going diving at this time. Okay. Besides that was just more fellowship, camaraderie, networking with really high level people. Joe Huffman, Tim Brown, Jack Ryan, David Daniels, and the list goes on. Erico, Mike Claudio, right? Like I would have just went. Yeah, right. Ty Backer, right? And this is my insecurity kicking in, right? This whole time. And I don't deserve to be in a group, in the same house with these people, right? It's all about me. I had to make it all about me, but I stepped outside of myself. I did it. And anyhow, when I get there and it's like, people are asking me questions, right? Like, so now it's not like, what am I going to get from this trip? Right. Cause that's what we think. Like, what am I going to get out of there? I'm not going to get anything good out of this trip. Well, I get there and it's more so like, okay, what am I bringing to this trip? So I get there and like people are asking me questions, like shit that I know about. I actually know about, how to sustain a business for 17 years, right? Like and everything in between from day one to now, they're asking me these questions. I feel like I'm banging on all 8 cylinders. Like if anything else, this is why I'm here, right? Not just what I'm going to get from it, because obviously I got a shit ton from it. There was a lot of metaphors, whether it was overcoming adversity or learning how to deal with adversity, reprogramming my mind under certain circumstances, especially high pressured circumstances, and then retraining my mind how to breathe, not through my nose anymore, but through my mouth, and then actually slow down and smell the roses. Yeah. Right. Like, let's stop thinking about me so much. And like, let's actually take in the atmosphere here. Let's stop thinking about how I'm not, breathing, or how I am breathing, or I'm using up too much oxygen. Let's take in the atmosphere here a little bit. Like, okay, I'm 30 some feet underwater here, man. Like I'm gaining a superpower here, like Aquaman. Okay. I'm digging it. The worst part of it was the training, right? They give you all worst case scenarios. Let's turn your oxygen off while you're 40 feet below. Yep. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me, but okay. Tell your friend or your buddy, it's buddy system. Let him know I'm out of air. Grab the secondary that he's got, stick it in your mouth. Okay, cool. Got through it. Gave it back to him. Turn the air back on. Put my regulator back in. Still alive. We're good. Rip your mask off now. Yep. Underwater. Okay.
That's the worst one. That was the hardest one for me, is taking the gear off.
Yeah. And then you got to take the actual gear off that wants to float away. And then actually getting it off was the easy part. Getting it back on was, for me, it was the hard part, because I think the actual unit and the vest and everything weighs more than I do. Yeah. So to like manhandle this thing, and then you got all of these, you got your secondary, you got your regulators, you got your whatever the hell that thing is that fills it up with air and lets air back out of it. That thingy, your snorkel smacking in the face and wants to help rip your mask off and let water in there and shit. And all these crazy things going on that I'm not even used to, nor do I even know the names of these things yet. Like, what does this do? What does that do? And the weights, they actually put weights on you. Like, dude, that's like, no, you're not weighing me down underwater. Like, we're not doing this. Right. Okay. Cause that just sounds really stupid to me. Like, you're going to throw like stones in my vest and like weigh my ass down.
How they kill people, right? They put a millstone around their ankles and throw them in the water. Right.
Right. So like, I'm not digging none of this. And then the other thing was too, one of the principles that I've learned over the years, it's like, one is like, the only way to get out of me is to get into somebody else. So fortunately, there was 3 other gentlemen that were going through the same training as me. And the other 8 people that were there were already experienced divers. So they got to do their own separate dives. And then the 4 of us, me, Tim, Jack Ryan, and there's another gentleman, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. It'll come to me then. So we're all kind of in the same boat together, literally, physically, metaphorically in the same boat together while we're diving. Okay. Like, none of us know what the hell we're doing. We're all kind of like trying to act like we're not scared, but I know for a fact that we are. At least I was. And maybe I didn't show it as much, because Tim told me later, he's like, I didn't realize you were as nervous as you were until you told me. And he said, I saw what you did there. Like, you started to pay more attention to me than you did your own self. I was like, that's exactly what I did, because I was taught that. I've known that for the past 10 years. Like, the only way to get out of me is to get into somebody else. Like, lessen their burdens, right? Like, so how can I help you out? Like, I'm going through shit right now myself, but the only way I can forget about it is to dive into your mess. Right. And that's kind of like what I did. I kind of like was making sure that he was okay. He was still behind us or he's in front of us. And I'd look at him every now and then under the water. And this obviously means, okay, you chill. Yep. I'm good. And, and I just paid more attention to him, and it kind of took my mind off of me. Right. Like my problems weren't that important anymore because I'm more concerned about Tim now at this moment.
Yep.
Right. Because he's like a 6'2" dude. Not, it's almost like, some people just look like I don't know if there's a perfect size to be a scuba diver, but like, I know most jockeys at race horses are like really short. Right.
Yeah.
And that just fits perfect. Like Tim wouldn't be a good horseback rider because he's so tall, or a roofer because he would have to bend over. Well, with him being such a obese, tall, not that he's heavy or anything, but he's just a really tall guy. Like he just looked at first kind of awkward in there, and buoyancy has everything to do with how much air you have in your lungs, and how much you blow out has a lot to do with your buoyancy, plus the weights that they think is a great idea to pack in your vest has a lot to do with your buoyancy in there. And both of us were having issues with that, but I was more concerned about him again, like I said, and it just, it wasn't that bad. I started, to relax a little bit, and just thinking about it kind of gets my anxiety up a little bit, just thinking about diving again. So I'm not looking forward. Well, I don't have my next diving date planned yet, but I will go next year for sure with Eric when he does this.
Your certification's what, a year, 2 years?
I don't know, but I don't think there's really anything other than probably paying something. I don't think you have to redo it.
Oh, okay.
Every so often. I think once you're certified, you're certified. Now your equipment, on the other hand, needs to be inspected every so often, more often than not, just because that's a big deal, right? Like you need all of that inspected, the tanks and your regulators and things like that. The valves need inspected, I think, yearly, which is only, I think, a really smart thing to do when it comes to, breathing. We eventually got down to about 130 feet. And, we didn't find that out till we got back up there. But, besides the scuba, I mean, it really was. The whole trip was amazing. The conversations that we had, the things that we learned from each other, and the vulnerability. I think that was the greatest part of it all, right? Like, was just to be able to take down all defense mechanisms and just breathe freely around other roofing contractors, other people in our space, whether it's marketing, door to door, other contractors and people like that, and like-minded people in the same space that we're in right now. It's just great to be really vulnerable. Joe Huffman and I had some really high level, deep conversations. We're both kind of in the same positions in our companies. And it was really nice to talk to somebody else and know that they struggle or have the same fears or same successes. You know what I mean? I felt very open and freely to speak with Joe at that level. And then of course, having other conversations with the other guys too, was just, I learned just as much from them, whether they know it or not, as they did for me. And the other, if anything else, it was just a reminder of where I was and not to forget where I came from either, Bum. Kind of thing. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you guys gonna do it again? Is it like going to be an annual? Was this the first of many years to come?
First of many to come. This is just the beginning. Eric has a lot of cool stuff up his sleeve right now. We do a bi-weekly call. It's called the Cult Culture Movement. So there's a bi-weekly call. Joe Huffman just signed up, so I'm super excited about that. Some other roofing contractors that are in it. And then not anybody, but just, just because you're not necessarily a part of the group, the Cult Culture Movement group, you'll be able to go. Like Joe wasn't a member, and there was a few other, I think there was actually only 3 or 4 of us that were actual members of CCM. But yeah, so you'll definitely, if you want to go, you'll definitely be able to go. So
cool.
Yeah, it's fun. A lot of fun. Yeah, man.
Yeah, you had extended the invite and didn't work this year, but I'd love to do it next year.
Yeah, it was fun. Have you gone scuba diving? Are you certified?
I did in Jamaica one time. It was on our honeymoon. It was a little bit different. I mean, this was 18 years ago now. And my memory is a little bit vague on it. And that's why I was asking you about how long your certification is good for, because mine was like not a very intense certification. We did a pool training. We had to, take off all our equipment, put it all back on in the pool. And then was kind of I remember that was the last thing before we could go out and on the boat. And it was really certification for that resort and their dive team or their instructors. So like I couldn't have used that to go anywhere else. But I mean, I think we went to like 40 feet, maybe 50 feet, something like that. But I just remember it was just an incredible experience.
It really is.
Would love to do it again.
Yeah, it really is. Like I said, the training, the first 2 days, we did 2 dives each day. Actually, all 3 days we did 2 dives. So the first 2 days was kind of annoying, right? Because we're training, but they're also giving us a little bit of time to catch up with they called it the fun group that actually were certified already, where we were able to catch up with the fun group and have a little bit of fun. But then, it was very nerve wracking up until that point because we were training underwater 30, 40, 50 feet down. You're not in a swimming pool anymore, kid. Like, we're deeper than 10 or 12 feet here, where if something does go wrong, we got to do a safety check. You know what I mean? I got to go up, one every 1 second per foot per second or some shit like that. And then they do now a safety check where you got to kind of hang out, I don't know, about 20 feet or so for about 3 minutes before you can actually surface anymore. So there may be some changes from the last time you went. And I heard that like recently some things changed just for, more safety and, for yourself and those around you and stuff like that. But what's cool about this trip is that they have the trainers there just for people like us.
Sure.
Right. Like somebody that hasn't done it for a while, they'll group you up. Like, how much experience do you have? Well, I dove twice. Okay. Well, we'll put you over here with the trainees. Right. And then those that have gone, a dozen or times more got to go with the guides, I guess, for lack of better terms, like, cause there's guides on the boat that go down with you. Like, they're not going to just let you, maybe they will, but on this trip, Eric had, I'm just going to assume Eric had like the trainer, or not the trainers, but the guides go down with them. Cause obviously I don't know if any of us have ever been to Cayman and on these reefs or not, but I can see how you get lost down there very easily. Now, granted, you just got to surface, but still, I wouldn't have wanted to go down there without someone that was experienced and familiar with the landscape.
Yeah. It's underwater forest.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Tunnels, caverns, caves. Yeah. Yeah, it was good. Yeah. So it was a blast. There's a lot that I got out of it. I mean, it was like, coming back and there was something too that came about. There was some personal stuff that I was kind of going through. Something didn't quite work out, and it wasn't even necessarily personally, but it was business stuff that sincerely was one of the reasons why I didn't want to go. And I was reminded, not to get, too far out in the weeds on the God business stuff, but it brought me back to my knees. There was a moment where I was in Cayman that I actually dropped to my knees and asked him for help, which was so funny because it must have been a minute since I did that. You know what I mean? Like, sincerely, not just that one in the morning where you're just kind of like a little grateful. Thank you for what you give me. Thank you for what you take of me. And thank you mostly for everything you've left me. Kind of, you kind of just becomes redundant kind of thing. You know what I mean? When nothing's really going on or there's somebody sick in your life or whatever, you know what I mean? It just kind of becomes redundant, but like this was a little bit different. Right. And it was so funny to watch like his miracles happen. And I believe it. I'm not a Bible bumper. I've been to church 3 times in my life, but I am very much a spiritual being. And there was a situation that was going on, and, it was kind of taken away from the experience that I was having. And I kind of just gave it to him. Like, hey man, I know you got broad shoulders. I kind of need you right now. And I hate to ask you this because, I feel like the only time I ever pray is when I need something kind of thing. I was having a conversation with him, and that's usually what my prayers consist of. It's just a conversation with the man upstairs, right? Like it doesn't have to be like this big, huge, elaborate, Serenity Prayer or the Lord's Prayer or any crazy, prayer. Just for me anyhow, it's just a conversation that I have with the man or whatever it is, right? And I had a conversation with him, man, and it was like bam, bam, bam. And it doesn't always happen like that, but it's like he gave me the strength that I needed in that moment, right? Whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just how I felt. I felt much more at peace. And I was able to center myself and remove myself from self, right? Because that's really what it was. I was very self-absorbed prior to this. Like everything was about me, like worried for me, worried about this, and it all kind of just like all fingers pointed back to me. And in this trip, probably the biggest thing I got out of it is like it took me out of me. For that, and even I still feel that way when I got back here, like, so the small little things that we have to go through during entrepreneurship and managing and leadership, like there's things that we go through, right, like on a daily basis that in some people's eyes might seem like a big deal, but it's kind of like you become a little bit callous. But what happens, I think at times it starts to build up. It manifests in this thing that we don't even know, identify or notice, right? But then it starts coming out in different ways where it's like maybe I start taking things out on people that have nothing to do with anything else that's going on in my life and stuff like that. So I kind of felt like I was getting to that point prior to this trip. I was very self-absorbed, right? Like me, how I feel, what's going on with me, and and I was taking my focus off like the primary purpose of like why I'm doing this. Why, like the trip, and why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I even here? Why am I still showing up? I should have retired 5 years ago. Like this fucking bullshit, right? And it's like, dude, you signed up for this. Like I knew what I signed up for a long time ago, and it's like I started to lose sight of that, where it's like what was important to me just wasn't that important. You know what I mean? Like other people's feelings, or I don't care what they think about it, or I don't care how this affects them. And I was just, there was a brief moment, probably the week leading up to that, I became very self-absorbed, not financially greedy or anything like that. It was more so like my attitude towards things. You know what I mean? Like my patience and tolerance for people and silliness and stuff. And like where I just didn't want to be that shoulder today for you to cry on. Like I'm not into it. Like inspiring, very tiring. Get away from me. You know what I mean? Like I started to become very like, I don't even know how to explain that. I think unless you've gone through something like that, you probably think I'm crazy.
No, I think to a certain degree, anybody that has kids knows what that feels like, right? I mean, you don't have to be the leader of a large multi-state company like you to feel that in some way, right? It's different in your shoes, but I feel that way as a dad with a 10, 8, and 5-year-old, like where it's just like, would you guys just like go to bed and leave me alone? Like I'm sick of catering to your needs, and that patience wears thin, and so I think any parent can relate to that. You just want just leave me alone,
Yeah.
So,
well, and I had an opportunity to look back to see what led up to that. What was I not doing? The selfish part of this is what was I not doing for myself? What expectations was I not meeting, or what goals, what promises was I breaking to myself to make me feel that way? Because when there's something wrong, right? When there's something wrong with me at the end of the day. Think about that for a second. I'm going to say it again. When there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right. It isn't, I've dealt with these situations hundreds, sometimes thousands, dozens of times, but today I'm handling it much differently. Why? Yeah. It's not that you did anything differently, right? Or this situation's not very unusual, but I'm not dealing with it very well today. And why? What led up to that? And usually for me, it's a series of things, not just because I didn't get enough sleep last night, right? Because I think tired a lot of times is a mindset, and that's a whole other topic. But obviously you gotta sleep. You got to get a lot of rest, good, whatever, figure out what that rest is for you. Some people it's 4 hours, some people it's 8 hours. Eating healthy, right? Working out, reading daily affirmations, listening to podcasts, reading books, whatever, what was I, and I think a lot of it and I know for a fact what it was, there was promises that I was making to myself and other people where I felt like I was failing. And simply put is that my pride or my ego wasn't allowing me to ask for help. I was biting off more than I could chew. There was deadlines that I didn't meet for certain things. And it was really starting to eat me alive, and it was coming out in different ways, right? Like my attitude towards things. I wasn't, my self-esteem was low. I was short-tempered. And really at the end of the day, what it came down to is that I needed to ask for help. And I asked Tam for help. Tam has become over the past 3 weeks, my assistant, which has been a lifesaver to me. And it's like, I almost needed to tell on myself a little bit, like, hey, Tam, I got these things going on, man. Like there's not enough time in the day, or I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I don't know why I said I was going to do it, but I think you could really help me out with this. It was just few things. It wasn't a whole lot of things. It was about 3 or 4 things that I just needed help with. Right. That selfishly, if I would have gave it to her sooner, it would have improved the quality of her life. And it was things like that, where it was like improving the quality of the company's life. You know what I mean? Like things that I wanted to do and things that I wanted to get the company involved with. But like I was being selfish to a certain extent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, I can do this. I want to do this. And it was like, well, that was dumb. You know what I mean? Like I just missed an opportunity to like actually empower somebody or empower a team or assign them a task to feel ownership in something. And it was like, I was holding on to the shit that was literally making me feel miserable inside because I wasn't doing it.
No, I love it, Ty. I mean, Ty, what you're explaining, hopefully the analogy resonates with people listening that have children. But I mean, you are a father of the children in your company. It's the same interaction as a dad or a mom in a
100%.
Whether you have one child or you have, 6. The reality is you can, try to do it all yourself and then take out your anger and frustration on your kids, where you can bring them into the process. And I think the challenging part is like, well, I don't want to make them do the dishes or, get their dirty clothes because they won't do it right, or they won't, turn their clothes right side out, or stupid stuff. But if we get them involved, it lightens our load, and then we can have the capacity to love them the way that they need to be loved. Like you said, the problem is it's a me problem. When there's issues with the kids, sure, they're acting out, but at the end of the day, like our kids are a mission field. Like they're the ones that they literally need help. They're foolish by nature because they're just children. And so, I can choose to, blame it on them for, they're just disobedient. If only they would just listen. Why do I have to repeat myself all the time? But that's a me problem. That's not their problem. No. And I'm constantly learning that. And, I think we've talked about this a little bit, but like I can't say the last 15 months anymore because it's been like 3 months since I've really traveled, but there was like a 15-month stretch there where I was traveling with you, and you were doing a lot more than I was, but I was traveling, and it got tough at home because I just lost that edge was dulling because I was gone a lot. And my re-entry in the home was always rough and all those things. So, it's been really nice the last 3 months to just kind of be here, and just be more mindful of my role. Like I said, a mission field. Like these kids Heidi and I aren't missionaries. We don't do that. And, God bless people that do that and raise kids. But like our mission field is our kids when they come home from school, putting them to bed, feeding them dinner, which is a war every day, because nothing tastes good. Yeah. But anyway, so I totally relate to what you're saying. You're just applying those same interactions in a company setting.
Yeah.
We all can experience that at home too if we have a family. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe if we don't have a family, maybe we remember that when we were, home with our folks.
Yeah. No, and I love how you brought it home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like to the house, the home life, right? Because, a lot of times I think I get caught up in, that or don't get caught up in like how important is it really, right? That they left their shoes on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I do it all the time. I've done it. I've not cleaned up after myself. I've left the dirty dish on the coffee table. You know what I mean? Those things that I know for a fact that annoy the shit out of Jana. And I'm sure you've done the same thing to Heidi, and it's like, here I am, not necessarily even leading by example, but I'm making a big deal out of it. And I think it really comes down to like not being very centered and okay with myself at that moment, because I feel like maybe everything else is out of control in my life, but I'm going to come home and I'm going to control, that control freak in me starts veering its ugly head. Like, no, you're going to listen to me. Right. Like, and I think that's what it comes down to all the time. But if we can really look at it, and our jobs as parents is to bring joy and coach and mentor, and be patient with our children, right? Like that's what we were here to do. Like they didn't ask to be here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Like they didn't ask to be here, and hopefully kids are out there listening to this and can use that to their advantage. But like, I'm not even the one, because I think I yelled that at my mom once. I didn't even want to be here. But but we got to keep that in mind, like I read a book every day. It's called The Daily Dad by Ryan Holiday. And it's so good. It's so good because it's so well-rounded on every aspect, facet, and it's very neutral. Right. And that's what I like about it. It's not too far right. It's not too far left. It's very neutral. And he quotes everybody. I mean, quotes everybody. And he uses, because he's like a modern day Stoic. So Marcus Aurelius is brought up a lot, and I really like his theories and his thinking, the way that he thought back. I don't even know how long ago that was, and he didn't even have a mentor or a coach or anything. But like, we're still 2,000 years later, we're still using his quotes and his literature and reading from it and stuff like that. But anyhow. But I read it and it really helps me. And I try to apply that to be a better parent today. That's one of the books. I read another daily affirmation book that I really enjoy. And I've actually read that for over 10 years now. I read it every single day. I've read it 10 times the same day, 10 years in a row. And it means something. The crazy thing is that it means something different to me today than it did 10 years ago, let alone just a year ago, right? Like how much differently I think today, or how it applies differently in my life today. But one of the things that he talks about is like the encouragement of your children, leading by example. If you're not doing it, don't dare tell them not to do it. Right. Mm-hmm. And how you're treating each other, parents, like how are we treating each other, and how do we want them to leave this house and treat other people? If we're arguing all the time and doing things and making them lie, like tell your teacher that you were sick today. Like, how do you think they're going to go through life? That's acceptable now. Mm-hmm. My mom told me, the reason why we stayed home was because I was sick, but knowing damn well we just wanted to go to the amusement park or whatever the case might be. But it's like, we have to be super cautious and careful about like, what are we disciplining and why? Like, how is this going to affect them? Because they're sponges, man. We all know kids are so super smart. They're very resilient. So if we do screw up, it's okay. Kids are very resilient. Thank God. Right. Because there wasn't, at least back when I started having kids, there wasn't like a YouTube channel where I could watch how to be a great parent, or even a book, let alone, maybe there was a book, but I just wasn't smart enough because there wasn't Kindle or Amazon or anything like that where I could go and like actually search a book on how to be a better parent or anything like that. So there wasn't a roadmap for me to become a better parent. But like the bottom line is like, how do we actually want people to see our children? How do we want our children to treat other people? Right. And how do we want to be treated? So, and that's how we would treat our own kids and mentor them. And that's what's so cool. It's like the things that I didn't have, or I wasn't aware of at age 5, I have the opportunity to bring that to their attention today. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't get to experience these things when I was 5 years old. I didn't get to experience these things when I was 10 years old. Like Rocket's at a really cool age right now where like I'm sharing my books with him because I'm grooming him because he's the future. He's the future. He's our next in line of leadership. And how cool would it have been if I would have had those resources or that mentor, that coach, or that parent at that time? And don't get me wrong, my dad has and is still one of my biggest coaches and mentors today. Right. But the tools and the resources that we have access to and how fast we can get them up to speed on how to become a better speaker, how to become a better student, how to treat women, how to all of these things of respect and, you know, and being responsible. Right. Because that's probably one of our biggest things. Well, why are you so irresponsible? Or how can you be so irresponsible? And it's like, God, they're 7 years old. Like, give them a break. Really. The day. So yeah,
well, it's such good stuff, Ty. And I mean, we could probably go another hour talking about all of that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's good stuff.
Sorry, I felt like I took you hostage here for a second. Sorry.
No, that was great. I loved it. You added some great context to what I was trying to say. Being a dad is obviously, growing Lead Scout and making Lead Scout the best, tool and resource it can be to this community that we are a part of, is right at the top. But, being a good husband and a good dad is right above that. So, so it's just good to talk about.
It is. And traveling's hard, as a parent, as a leader, an entrepreneur, like you were talking about, like 15 months, that was grueling. And again, playing back into that mental toughness, like this isn't for the weak-minded or the weak-hearted, and the correction that we have to make. Like when you said, when you got back, like that entry back into the household was a learning curve because I've never experienced what we experienced last year.
Yeah. We figured it out. Like it was on the spot training.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just figured it out by doing it wrong a lot of times.
I
think that's how we probably all learn a lot of things. You touch the pan, it burns you. You're like, I'm not doing that again. That's how we learn. It's just painful to learn that way sometimes, but it is. I think that's why it works.
For sure. For sure. Through pain comes growth. Everybody knows that, through self and the problem, not the problem, but the reality is 90% of the issues that we deal with or the pain that we suffer from is self-inflicted pain. 90% of it. And I'm leaving 10 in there because good things do happen to bad people, things, but how we deal with it, I think is really the difference, right? Like how long do we let that stick with us? How many days do we let it ruin our days? Those, and through learning the trial and error of like, okay, I don't like how I'm feeling right now. Like I'm done making myself miserable and everybody around me. When you can identify that and knowing that you're doing that to yourself and those that you love, because we hurt the ones that we love the most, right? Those that are at home, starts at home. We're treating them like shit. I'm miserable. They're miserable because really at the end of the day, and it's kind of like a healthy codependency going on in your household. Right. Like, because when daddy gets home, he sets the tone. Right. You know what I mean? You got to like clear out your inboxes, get your shit, sit in the driveway for a minute, listen to your favorite rock song and jam out. And before you go in the house, but that didn't happen. And I'm still not 100% great at that. Right. Because the phone will still ring when I go home or whatever. And it'll be like a light switch went off. I went home. I'm in a great mood. I take a phone call. I read an email. I take a text message and boom, they sense it. They know it. Jana knows it. My face, my persona, everything, my presence about me just changes. Boom. Not as bad as it used to be. I used to bring everything home. Everybody else's worries, wants, complaints. I used to bring all that home all of the time. And it's like, I've gotten much better at it. I'm not 100% perfect at it because they don't know what they don't give a shit. They just want dad home.
Yep.
Right. Like, where's dad? Can you sit down for a minute? It's like, I took it this past year, this whole school year. And this morning I actually got to see Rocket for about 2.3 seconds, but I had to leave early today, but I try to spend about 5 to 15 minutes with Rocket every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Something I never did before. I know it might sound pathetic to some people, but it was like, I thought I worked myself to death thinking that's what my family needed.
Yep.
But knowing what I know today is that's not what they actually needed from me. That's not what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what they needed, but it's not really what they wanted. Right? They just wanted me, my time, just to be there. And the consistency of my face in the morning, asking him, what are you guys working on today?
Mm-hmm.
How did that project go yesterday? Just little small conversation. It's not nothing. And to me, it's very profound. You know what I mean? It's very important that we spend that quality 10, 15 minutes in the morning. And like I said, this morning, it was about 2.3 seconds. And I was actually, and I'm going to snitch on myself here a little bit, is that I was going to leave without saying goodbye to him. But I think he heard me coming down the steps and opened up his room door and stuck his head out there. And I was like,
he's used to that routine in the morning of seeing you.
Yes. That consistency.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I don't know how many first days of school or football practice or basketball games that I've missed over the years. I can't count them on both hands and feet, like, unfortunately. And honestly, today, my success rating is different today. Like how I rate success, right? Yep. Success for me starts at the house. And I keep saying that publicly here a lot lately because it's not true until I announce it publicly, right? If I keep it up here and I don't verbalize that and I don't say it, like it won't come to fruition, right? But if I keep saying it to myself and I keep saying it out loud, like my success starts at home, my success starts at home, my success starts at home, eventually, continuously working on that, hopefully at some point in time, it'll start working me, right? Working into my life naturally. And right now I'm in a good space right now. This week's been a good week. Even prior to going to the scuba diving, the exhale, they called it, the retreat was called Exhale, which was pretty cool because we got a minute to actually catch our breath, and plus we were scuba diving. But even leading up to that, nothing was wrong. The only thing that was wrong was the 6 inches between my ears. I was still performing well. I just didn't feel right. Something was off. I felt overwhelmed, and I was overwhelming myself. It really, at the end of the day, it wasn't anything outside that was any different, really. It's the same pressure. I don't know why it's any different today than it was yesterday, but I think it was the broken promises that I made to myself. It was really starting to eat me alive a little bit. And when I asked for help, man, it just immediately changed my outlook, my perception, my attitude changed almost immediately when I gave up.
Yep. Love that.
Yeah.
To the end of yourself. Things.
Yeah.
I said you just being able to come to the end of yourself and you find amazing things.
Yeah. I thought you said that it made you think of 3 things. I'm sure it made you think of a lot of things. Yeah. No, that's cool though. It's good. I enjoy our conversations, Chris. It's always, usually I think you're the one that ends up talking most. This time, I
intentionally did that.
Did you?
It's been a minute since I hadn't talked to you since your trip, and I just wanted to get the download on what's going on with Ty. So I appreciate it.
You got it. You got it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Plus, sometimes like you were saying, sometimes I feel like I do these calls all day, every day, and it's kind of about me, right? It's about Lead Scout or what I have to offer. And so sometimes it's just nice to listen. And so thanks for letting me listen today. Yeah.
You're welcome, buddy. You're welcome. No, I always enjoy our conversations. Like you said, it's been a minute since we got caught up, and we did it, fortunately or unfortunately, with everybody listening live today. But like we said last night, like I think we briefly talked about, well, what are we going to talk about? It's like, why don't we just catch up?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Why don't we just catch up? So at least I'm caught up with you. So maybe we'll catch up later this week, and I'll find out more about what's going on in
Love to share
Chris's world. But
we'll save everybody the next 54 minutes, and you won't get the download from Chris this time, but I'll gladly give it to you, Ty. Just call me anytime.
I know that. So right there, I think that's a great way to wrap up this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. Chris, always a pleasure. Thank you. You know I love you. If you need anything, let us know.
I will.
And thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't liked, loved, subscribe, please do that. Please share this with your friends. I think this was a pretty good episode. A little vulnerability there. I told on myself on a couple of things there. And but thank you guys for taking the time out of your day for Wednesday lunchtime. Hopefully you caught us on your lunch break and not getting in trouble with your boss today by listening to this. But check it out on the replay if you didn't get to hear the whole thing. And we'll see you next week on episode 229, where we are going to have another great guest, somebody we haven't had on the show yet. So you'll have to check it out next week. And stay tuned, and we'll check you guys out next week. Thanks for watching.
See you guys.